Good day, investors. I am Jared Bowers, and today we are going to continue our focus on reps. We got into it pretty deep in the previous episode, but I want these episodes to be able to stand on their own, so I want to throw in a quick recap to make sure that we are on the same page. Reps are the actionable unit. Reps are what moves the needle. Reps matter not just to our results, but to our identity. We are what we do and do repeatedly, not just what we believe in or how we feel. Everything falls on a beginner to intermediate to expert continuum, and we move along that path through reps. Reps are the bricks that the road is built out of that compounding can then travel down. The main reasons we resist reps is because of our immediate gratification bias, our aversion to hard work, and our avoidance to feeling like a beginner. We can't be it tomorrow, but we can earn it over time. Man, I could have just skipped the last episode. Maybe I should make 60-minute and 60-second versions of the podcast. That might be fun, and you might save time. As we continue our discussion on reps, I'd like you to consider something. Think of a time in your life where you were doing what seemed like the right thing. You were doing it consistently for a long time, and there were just no results that were showing up. You were putting in the reps, but what was supposed to be coming from the reps, progress, was just not translating. This happens with fitness quite often. Someone doing a great job of showing up, but looking and feeling pretty much the same after months or even years. Diet and nutrition is another common one. Feeling like you're doing all the right things, but the results are not showing up where you want them to. I remember this happening when I was studying certain subjects in school. I'd read through the material 10 times, but it wasn't translating into knowledge. The same can happen in relationships. Consistent reps put in, same persistent issues. Now, some of these may be caused by factors outside of our control, but we should care a lot less about those factors because outside of our control means we can't do much about them. But most of the time, the lack of progress in these areas can be under our control and in our hands. And often, it's not just about trying harder. It's about doing the right things in the right way at a sustainable intensity for long enough to build capacity, momentum, and results. Let's talk about effective reps versus ineffective reps, because not all reps are created equal. In fitness, when we're talking about moving weight in the gym, this is referred to as sending the signal, which is the order to adapt. The signal has to be strong enough. We have to pull the lever hard enough, literally and figuratively. The signal has to be strong enough to force adaptation. Our bodies don't change outside of an effective stimulus that it must change in response to. We, all people, are incredibly adaptable physically, mentally, relationally, economically, but in every one of those domains of life, we are resistant to adaptation. This is something that can easily be misunderstood because it can sound like two opposite statements. How can we be highly adaptable but yet also resistant to adaptation? Think of this relationship like an unmotivated but highly capable teenager. Able to do incredible things, but it can take a big effort on your end and on their end to actually go do them. A very strong and firm order has to be given. The incredible inertia of doing nothing must be overcome by a strong force. And that's why we should think about reps in every context of life as weak signal versus strong signal. In the gym, you know whether you sent a strong enough signal, especially if you have fitness experience. And looking around the gym, you can probably see a lot of examples of both. Yeah, I worked out. Those 5-pound dumbbells really worked me over. Oh, and I also used some 8-pound weights. Not strong signal. Grandma, I'm not talking about you. You are killing it with those 8-pounders. Keep it up. Compare that to the guy who keeps shouting at his friend who's spotting him on the bench press that he has another rep. and he grinds out 3 more after most sane people would have stopped. One is weak signal, and the other is strong signal. Weak signal sent for long enough can still result in some adaptation, so there is nuance. And strong signal sent too frequently can cause injury or burnout, so we have to be reasonable and have the right expectations. And a fitness example that is not so far on the meathead side, I'd like to talk about my wife, Alicia. By the way, I recently got her okay to actually call her by name on the podcast. Progress! Maybe she'll join me behind the mic someday. Alicia had been working out consistently for several years but wasn't getting results, based on her own admission. The results that she wanted to see. She eventually decided to let me program her workouts. Mostly the exercises, not so much the weight. She wasn't going to be up for that. And at that point is when she started seeing progress, within even a few short months. I paired appropriate exercises together rather than just randomly, and she chose the number of reps and the sets and the weights, and she worked out on her own. Remember, I still haven't gotten her to work out with me. Still working on that. And she does all the reps. The only thing that changed was the workouts were built with purpose and intention, focused on effectiveness. Not all reps are equal. Some are weak, performative, unfocused, too easy to create adaptation. And other reps really do send the signal. Most people know what it feels like to finish a workout that was legit. Nobody doubts when a real signal was sent. And if we stack enough of those, with proper recovery and good nutrition, progress comes. We need to consider weak signal versus strong signal. The same is true across so many aspects of life. We are able to adapt in amazing ways, but we won't if the need isn't there. And that ties into not just pulling the lever hard enough, but pulling the levers that actually matter. Are we pulling the right lever? Someone who is training for a strength competition, going in and sprinting on the treadmill, is going to get quite a workout. They checked the intensity box, but they pulled the wrong lever. They sent a strong signal, but it was a strong signal not in the right direction. They should have been lifting, not doing cardio. The reps that they put in, even the hard reps that they put in, did not contribute to their goal. We can lift a lot of weight in the gym and not have it be effective. If the point is to build strength, leaving the gym really sweaty and tired because you threw around a lot of light weight for a couple hours may not be the reps that were needed. Yes, you got a good workout. You checked the workout box. But just because it was hard and it was with weights doesn't mean that you checked the effective signal box for the adaptation that was required. In this case, strength. We have to send a strong enough signal to force the adaptation that we are looking for. The same is true on the endurance side. A few heavy sets of squats is absolutely a workout, but it does not get you the endurance benefits that you were looking for. If you plan on running a marathon, those heavy sets may still be an important thing to do sometimes, but it should not be the main focus. Putting in reps is not just showing up and checking a box. That is weak signal. Putting in reps is showing up with a plan and pulling the lever hard enough in the right things to make progress. In marriage, it's not just about being in the same house and generally around each other. It's about having meaningful connection frequently enough and intensely enough. And you can take that however you'd like. In writing, it's not just about thinking about the piece, but actually writing words on the topic at hand. In fitness, it's not just going to the gym, but training in a way that produces what is intended. In work, it's not just clocking hours, it's solving problems that have meaningful outcomes and learning through success and failure. In parenting, it's not just being around, but it's about engaging and teaching and caring about things from their perspective. I have a hard time with that last part. And this relates to what we've talked about before. Having the right mix of macros. Investing in the right ways. Investing all the money in the world won't matter if time and energy was what was needed to be invested. All the time and energy in the world won't matter if you needed to put money to work to get the necessary outcome. That is what I mean by effective reps versus ineffective reps when it comes to our investing accounts of life. Calling back to the examples of stuckness, what we talked through at the beginning of this episode. Reps were being put in, but stuckness remained. If reps are being put in, that stuckness is often the result of the wrong kinds of reps, not enough intensity, or both. Reps alone, reps by themselves, are not enough. They have to be the right kind of reps at the right intensity to actually get results. Next, our reps need to be sustainable. And that is what I'd like to talk about before I dive deeper into what might sound like, just work harder, bro. What's the matter? You a wuss or something? You want more results? Just do more. As much as that resonates with the brainless meathead in my soul, there is more nuance to it. It is not just about working harder. It is about working smarter, sustainably, in an effective direction that we can repeat. We do not want to start and continue in a direction that makes quitting more likely. I often tell others, especially around fitness and nutrition, that we should not start something unless we think that we can continue it forever. We don't have to, but if we start something that is unsustainable and we know it is unsustainable from the start, the only sure outcome is that we will eventually quit. That is guaranteed. Instead, if we start something that we believe we could sustain forever, we don't have to, but at least we know that we could keep going. Doing too much too soon causes burnout or injury, which will always result in quitting. And this applies to athletics, to diet, and to everywhere else. We intuitively understand this when we see someone making a radical change. The crash diet, going from sedentary to hitting the gym hard every day. No connection with the kids to acting like super dad. No investment in the marriage to suddenly it's the only thing getting attention and focus. Struggling with waking up at 7:30 to rush out the door by 8. Suddenly, waking up at 5 a.m. and implementing an hours-long morning routine. There's a reason that we are skeptical that it will continue in all of those cases, because it almost never does. Slow progress that continues beats fast progress that stalls. Just like being invested is the most important step in getting returns, continuing to put in the reps is the most important step to making and sustaining progress. You may be tempted to scoff at the really overweight guy who just walks around the block every day. Like that's going to do much. But at least he's doing it and sticking with it. Because that is how habits are built. Sustainably and stuck to every day. That kind of approach is how someone gets to eventually walking around the block multiple times. Then how they get to eventually jogging a few times around the block. And then eventually running a mile. Maybe someday a 5K or a 10K or even a marathon. If it was 5K or bust right away for that guy, that is a recipe for quitting. Something that we will very likely talk in more detail about later is the 10% rule. But we will touch on it now. Where it is most often applied is in endurance athletics. Experienced runners and running coaches know that you do not want to ramp up running volume too quickly. Even for well-conditioned runners, you do not want to go from running 25 miles a week to running 50 miles next week. Most runners that are at that level probably can, but it's a bad idea. That's likely to result in burnout or injury. Or at the very least, being overly fatigued, which then results in burnout and injury. The 10% rule applied to endurance athletics is, you should not increase your volume more than about 10% per week, because it gives your body a chance to adapt. If you're running 25 miles per week, then next week it's maybe 28 miles. Weeks later, you'll work up to 35 miles. A couple weeks after that, you may be able to push up to 50. That is the endurance example of the 10% rule and how it applies. And that same rule applies in life. New Year's resolutions fail because people are trying to go from 0 miles in whatever domain that they're focused on to 50 miles right away. In their diet, in their reading goals, in their relationships, and it doesn't work. Volume and intensity have to be ramped up over time to be sustainable. Again, Slow progress that continues beats fast progress that stalls. We do not want to start in a way that makes quitting more likely. This is why we should be very careful about starting something that we do not believe that we can sustain forever. Slow progress is better than fast progress if slow progress means continuing and fast progress means quitting. Success in most things is not mysterious. It has been done before, and there is often a recipe and a progression to follow. This is the case in building wealth, building muscle, building skills. It is usually about continuing, completing, sticking with that process, and not sabotaging yourself at the start. And the 10% rule, this gradual ramp-up approach, applies to, yes, fitness, yes, diet, but also to sleep, our study habits, our money habits, how organized we are, our spiritual habits, building any new skill set, or breaking a bad habit. And the point is not perfect math. The point is directional correctness and sustainability. And this ties into our next fitness-related topic, which is progressive overload. Progressive overload is defined as building up to the intensity we need to be at to keep sending the signal to adapt. The key word here is building, which means that the reps should be progressing. Progressive overload in the gym means adding a little bit in terms of weight or reps, or a little bit in terms of intensity, to make sure that that signal is still being sent as we adapt to what we did before. If we're talking about the endurance side of things, it would be speed, mileage, number of workouts performed in a week. We should be progressing, not just through the reps, but upward with the reps. They should be getting more frequent, more intense, or heavier as we go. Because remember, we adapt to the reps that we're putting in. So we can be putting in the same type of rep consistently, but it's no longer sending the signal to adapt. We've already adapted to it. That's a big reason for that stuckness that we talked about. If we're putting in the same reps in the same way, at the same weight that we were 10 years ago, we need to reevaluate some things. We should not be having the same conversations, the same fights, the same frustrations as a couple that we had 10 years ago. Go do some growing and get some new things to fight about. That is a sign of progress. And not having that progression in our reps is a sign that progress is not there. And this concept of progressive overload comes from the gym, but I believe it applies even better to most other areas of life. No one has ever progressed forever, infinitely, on weight lifted or on miles run. No one has consistently set new mile or marathon PRs into old age. Usually there is a peak and a decline when it comes to our physical abilities. That's the reality with fitness and aging, at least for now, until the fountain of youth is unlocked. But that type of progress is possible in most other areas of life. We can continue making progress effectively forever in our relationships, our money, our influence, the teaching that we do, our leadership. Those are infinitely progressible. Since we adapt to reps over time, our capacity for the thing is built. This allows more reps that are more effective. That is the compounding effect that we talked about. Discipline is a muscle. Skills are developed, not inborn. Putting in reps is crucial because it builds discipline, confidence, and resilience. And confidence comes not just from succeeding, but from surviving failure. Failure is part of growth. You learn that you will survive. You learn to adjust and you learn to continue to move forward smarter and better equipped than you were before. Reps teach you that you can handle more than you thought you could. And this is a major source of resilience and confidence built. You can do hard things. You can get better at doing hard things over time. And that progressive overload process that we go through, that we then adapt to, and can then add more to, is how we keep that process going. We should not let ourselves stall out. Reps are crucial, but effective reps that keep the signal coming is where progress is really unlocked. As I mentioned before, it can sound like I'm saying just work harder. Just do the things that are hard for the sake of being hard. Quit being a wuss and just do it. But I will make the case that we should avoid hard mode if possible. at least the wrong kind of hard mode. And there are two types of hard mode. One is avoiding reps altogether, which results in a lot of frustration, a lot of stuckness, and a total lack of progress. That is a recipe for hard things being chosen for us, rather than us choosing the hard things. That is definitely a hard mode that we want to avoid. The other hard mode is hard for the sake of hard. Thinking that unsustainably hard reps are the only ones that count. The impossible workout schedule, the crash diet, the grand relationship gestures. And like most things we talk about, the answer is not in either extreme. Good and effective investing is usually a strategy that falls somewhere in the middle. We build capacity for capacity, but not by pushing to the brink or redlining or working ourselves to injury every time we do the reps. Sufficiently stressful repetition plus recovery produces growth. Hard for the sake of hard can build character, but it does not build sustainability. It can build resilience, but there are usually better ways. Hard and ineffective is dumb. Hard and effective is good, but I hope you're not surprised to hear me say this. Easy and effective is even better. Easy and effective beats hard and ineffective every day. Actually, easy and effective beats hard and effective as well. And this ties very directly into sustainability. Effective reps, well practiced, should result in more progress and more efficiency, not just being more tired. Taking that approach, focusing on effective, not just hard, is the sustainable path. Reps should not just compound in number and in difficulty, but in intelligence and effectiveness as well. I mentioned earlier about my wife's fitness. And something else you should know, or at least you are allowed to know, is that she does not love working out like I do. But years ago, she realized that she does not have to love it to get results. But it's also important that she doesn't hate it. And after spinning her wheels for a long time, she changed the plan and her approach to focus on the best results for the least time invested in a way that doesn't feel miserable. Because she did not just have to do it on hard mode. In this case, since working out isn't something she loves, working out in a way that might produce better results, more time, heavier weights, harder sessions, would actually result in worse results because she would hate it and she would want to stop, which means she eventually would. She had to make sure that it was hard enough to send the signal, to get the adaptation, to get the benefits, but done in a way that was sustainable. It didn't require hours more than what was needed. And we set the plan. She's followed the recipe. She's put in the reps. And she is getting excellent results because of it. And she even told me recently that when she doesn't work out for a while, it's like her body starts to protest the lack of exercise. Feeling slow and sore and lethargic, where she knows the cure is effective reps. You don't have to love it, but you do have to do it. And if you hate something, but still need to do it, focus on the maximum results for the lowest investment. It will still cost something, and it should. But just because something costs less doesn't make it worse. That is where effective reps can be most beneficial. And this is interesting. Getting better at something and getting results from something often helps us start to like it, even if we didn't like it before. Maybe even if we hated it before. Because progress itself is motivating. And investing in something will make you care about it more. As we've talked about before, the most important direction of the relationship is not that we invest in what we care about, but that we care about what we invest in. And this means investing consistently, putting in the reps and getting better at something, even something that we don't really like, can shift our perspective. And again, using fitness as an example, because this applies to a lot of people, taking this approach will help us sustain it and stick to it. We should not dive into something we know we hate in an unsustainable way. That is just going to make us quit. We should not push a boulder up a progressively steeper hill. Yes, it's an impressive effort, but that hill and that boulder will eventually win. I talked about podcasting in the last episode. and how episode 12 was probably closer to episode 212. But backing up even further, I never expected that writing would be one of the main things that I do now, which is one of the big drivers to getting to doing this podcast. Putting in as much time into writing professionally and non-professionally as I do is not something I would have anticipated to be in my future. When I was in college, especially in the first couple years of college, I dreaded writing. I would say that I probably hated it. I had no capacity for it. I had no skill for it. Having to write a 3-page paper felt like a monumental task. I was one of those students that adjusted the font a half size bigger, increased the margins by 0.1 or 0.2 inches on each side, put a couple extra spaces in the heading, just to get to the minimum page count, hoping that the professor wouldn't notice that the word count was a bit short. It was a chore, but life required the ability to write from me. And as I practiced it, I got better at it, to the point where I realized, many years ago, if there's one function that I do more than any other, I guess besides reading, it would be writing. Now, my writing time is protected. I schedule it. I anticipate it. It's how I think. I write to organize and process the research on the companies that I own or am considering. I write to communicate better. When I sit down or stand up in front of my keyboard, I can almost immediately get into a flow state. That was built up to, and those reps, those effective reps that I was able to stick with consistently, turned something that I hated into something that I can honestly now say that I love. Not because I started out loving it or even liking it, but because it was required of me, so I put in the reps and I got better at it. I invested in it. And as I got better at it, I learned to not hate it. Then I even learned to start liking it, which eventually turned into loving it. And the skill that I built and the amount that I invested in it had a huge part to do with that. I didn't invest in it because I loved it. I invested in it because I had to. But eventually, I learned to love it because I invested in it, built skills, and got good at it. And let's make sure that we're not losing sight of the core of what we're talking about right now. Reps are not just about hard. They are about effective. And the most effective reps are the ones that continue. It doesn't help to just eat clean for a few months. We need to clean up our diet and then eat in a healthy way, ideally for the rest of our lives, to really reap the benefits. It doesn't do much good to hit the gym for a couple weeks or even a couple months, or even during a sports season or training for one race. We need to have a plan for movement in place that is going to result in us sticking with it for the rest of our lives. Consistently good beats occasionally great. So how do we increase the likelihood that reps continue? Well, we talked about not playing on hard mode when it's not needed. And another powerful thing that we can do is build habits. Do them repeatedly in a structured way that is more likely to result in habit formation. I'm a big believer in if we can do it every day and it's something that we care about, we should. Because reps can become automatic, and those are the best kind. If we repeat something consistently enough, effectively enough, for long enough, eventually it transitions from what we do to who we are. This ties into what we talked about in the last episode. Reps are how identity is built, much more powerfully than how we feel or what we believe. We are what we do and what we do repeatedly. And if we consistently put in reps, we build those habits. It changes who we are. We become that person, not just the thing that we practice. So yeah, build habits. Another approach that we should take that makes putting in the reps more likely and more sustainable is that we should reduce the amount that we have to negotiate with ourselves to do it. The author Greg McKeown has an approach that really resonates with me. It's what he calls the decision that makes 1,000 decisions. One of the things that keeps us from making progress in the areas we want to be making progress in is that it becomes a fresh negotiation every time we are about to engage in what we know we should be doing. I keep coming back to fitness but it applies really well here. Asking yourself the question every day, do I work out? Should I work out? How should I work out? If that's not something that you love, that approach is exhausting. And that daily negotiation is setting you up for failure. It gives you a chance to negotiate yourself out of it at the very point that you're the weakest, right before you would do it. If you have to decide on a daily basis to exercise, if you have to make a fresh decision every day on whether you're going to eat healthy, if you have to make a decision every day on whether you're going to engage meaningfully with your family, you are going to be able to talk yourself out of it most of the time. You'll be able to make excuses for why you shouldn't, or why you don't need to, or why you will do it tomorrow. Instead, the decision that makes 1,000 decisions is, I work out every day. How you work out every day may change. You're still probably better off setting a consistent plan and then just sticking to it, also making that decision. But at the very least, deciding, this is what I do because this is who I am. Making the decision, I eat healthy every day. This is what I do. This is who I am. It is not a negotiation. As a quick example, one that I have along these lines is, I only eat dessert if it is excellent. If it's not excellent, I don't eat it. How many times have you been in a situation where you ate a bunch of dessert that was available and realized, I didn't even like that? That approach solves a lot of my food guilt. If it's excellent, I will eat it, and I will probably eat a lot of it. If it's not excellent, I'm not interested. And I made that decision a long time ago. Another example is that I've made the decision that I move with intention every day. It is not a negotiation. My wife is an example of that I talked about earlier. She made the decision. She doesn't have to negotiate with herself. So yes, reduce negotiation. Make the decision. The next point for making sure that effective reps continue is to lower the friction. Don't make it harder on yourself than it needs to be successful. Set up the workout the night before. Get your running clothes out and your running shoes ready. Prep the food that you're going to eat tomorrow. Schedule the time to have the conversation. Automate the investment and the savings. Those are all ways that massively lower the friction. You don't have to do the work in the moment to make the action happen. Or at least you don't have to do as much of it. Mostly, this is lowering the friction to get started, because often just getting started, just getting over that initial hump is the hardest thing to do. Any action that we can take to lower the friction of getting started and taking the action will result in those reps happening and then continuing. And then the final area that I'd like to talk about to make sure that we increase the likelihood of actually doing the reps and them continuing is setting up the environment for it. This is a topic that I love, environmental design. And it's very closely related to what we just talked about on lowering the friction. We'll have conversations in the future focused on the environmental design of investing. But this is things like removing the garbage food from your home. If it's not there, it can't be eaten, at least when you're at home. This is setting up your workspace so that you don't have to sift through a mess and close out a bunch of previous projects and windows just to get to the one thing that you need to do. Let's say when you need to sit down and write. The properly designed environment is that you can sit down, push a button, and write. Clean off your desk before you leave for work for the night so that you can get right to the work when you arrive in the morning. Simple things often work best. One of my favorite and most impactful environmental designs is having a home gym. That will not work for everyone. Space constraints, financial constraints. Many prefer to work out in a public gym around other people. But for me, it is a game changer. It reduces the friction and the excuses and gives me a purpose-built environment to pursue my fitness goals. And for those of you who prefer to work out in a public gym or just don't have the space for a home gym, pick a gym that is more likely to result in you going. And the number one determining factor by far in that decision should be proximity. It's been shown that more than anything else, being closer to your gym increases the likelihood that you'll go there. And of course, I think that's just another argument in favor of the home gym. Can't get any closer than that. Environmental design also involves setting up the space around you to remind you of the things that are important to do. If your goal is to read more, you better have the book on the nightstand with the reading lamp positioned and ready to go. More to dive into on this, but let's talk about how to identify what the reps are and then how to apply them. On identifying what the rep is, sometimes it's obvious. If we want to read more, we need to pick up the book and read the next page. If we want to run more, we need to put on the running shoes and get outside and start running. Those are the reps. Those are the obvious reps. But in many cases, the reps are not as obvious. And sometimes we are trying to figure out what the whole deposit is, let's say losing the next 5 pounds, rather than shrinking the scale down to what is doable right now, which is the rep. The next healthy meal. The next intentional movement of your body. Setting the plan and repeating those. For some people, their rep will look like another's big deposit. For one, it may be running 20 miles, but that is something that they're well practiced at. For another, the rep will look like putting on the running shoes and just stepping outside, because they're just getting started. Here is a simple test to identify the rep. If a task still feels daunting and undoable, keep shrinking it down to find the unit of the rep. Remember, I'm not talking about account moving deposits. I'm talking about the small actions that result in the change over time. The thing that deposits are built out of. What is the next simple action that will result in forward progress? Ideally, the next simple action that I can repeat that will get me the progress that I'm looking for. The rep is not building the perfect budget and then sticking to it. The rep is finding the list of the 10 best budgeting apps. Then the next rep is downloading the budgeting app that looks like it works best for you. Then putting your information from your bank accounts, your assets and liabilities into the app. The next actionable step. Setting a perfect budget and sticking with it is a big task and is daunting and is one of the reasons why we don't even get started. The important part is shrinking the scale down to the next thing that we can do. Identifying what can be done right now and not obsessing over the whole mountain. If you want to write a book, the rep is not writing the book. The rep is not even writing the next chapter. The rep may be just opening the document and then just putting words down. Then writing a whole lot of things that you'll probably throw away before you write something that you'll keep, which is great because it's practice. To develop more as a leader, the rep is not speaking up for the first time and trying to change the entire direction of the organization. The rep is raising your hand when there's a need. To take responsibility and to show that you can contribute on a small scale as you step into the large scale. If you want to build a stronger marriage, the rep is to connect in a meaningful way, to show care, to give without the expectation of getting in return. If we want to grow our spiritual lives, the reps are picking up and reading, saying the prayer, attending the next gathering. And the reps that we put in can change over time. And they should. As we get better at them, what used to feel hard may not feel hard anymore. If we're just getting started, the reps may be hard because we don't know how to do it yet or because we're weak. Our ceiling and our capacity is more adjustable than we realize in most cases. And the only way that we can adjust that capacity is to push against it, is to test that ceiling. The example I mentioned earlier about the endurance athlete ramping up their running volume, that might sound crazy to you. How could someone run 50 miles per week? Well, there are some people who run 50 miles in a day and do it pretty regularly. That capacity in every single case was built. It was not inborn. What once looked impossible can become commonplace through the practice of effective reps for long enough. A question that I ask myself when I encounter something that's hard for me is this: is it actually hard, or do I just suck at it? If I'm bad at something, it's going to be hard, even if it's not actually a very hard task. And that is a solvable problem, because we can build capacity and skill through putting in the reps. When I first started cycling over 15 years ago, a 5-mile ride would leave my legs feeling like jelly. Now, after the consistent reps put in for years, 5 miles is barely getting things warmed up. What was hard before is no longer. It wasn't that it was actually hard. It was just hard for me. I was weak. Calling back to my writing example from earlier, writing that 3-page paper wasn't hard. I was just bad at writing. Those novelists who crank out a quality book every year are the ultra-endurance athletes of writing. And they built up to that point through reps. How about this? Making my kids interact with strangers on the phone, in the airport, in the restaurant is not hard. But they've definitely complained about it because they aren't good at it yet. Just the other day, we had our 13-year-old son call the front desk of the hotel to ask for a rollaway bed. Easy enough, and he did it, but it didn't show up for a while. And we were looking to go to bed. So we had him call again, which is an escalation from a simple request. And he explained that we were hoping to get the bed soon because we had an early flight in the morning and we were wanting to get to bed. He was polite, he explained it, and it showed up 5 minutes later. Maybe not monumental, but if you know anything about teenagers nowadays and having to interact with strangers or talk on the phone, that was something that needed to be practiced. And it was reps that got him there. As simple and as trivial as that might sound, that is a rep on his progression to talking to his professor about a bad grade, to salary negotiation early in his career, to signing up his first customer after starting a business. Identifying areas of weakness in ourselves is great, because where we are weak is often the areas where we can make the most progress in the shortest amount of time. I'm not a runner, but I'm confident I could take my running capacity from where it is right now, which is probably only a few miles, to being able to run a marathon. Yes, that confidence is heavily influenced by my current endurance capacity on the bike, but that is a great thing about building capacity in one area. It often translates into higher or faster capacity in other areas. That means that I can 10x my running capacity pretty quickly. I cannot do the same thing on the bike because I'm already operating closer to my actual ceiling. I recently talked to a young man who claimed that he could not handle what was being asked of him. He said he couldn't do it. But what was being asked of him was well within doable bounds. I told him to try and see, because it wasn't what was being asked of him was too hard or was too much. It was that he did not yet have the capacity. What had not yet been built was being translated as, I can't do it. But the reframe is, I don't have the capacity to do it yet. It was hard for him, but it was absolutely doable, and he did it. Most others that had been practicing in that area would look at that workload as part-time. He had low capacity, and he did not yet know what high capacity looked like. He stepped up, he did it, and he realized that he could do it. Capacity is built through reps. I've seen this in my own life over and over and over again. Something that I tell people, hopefully as an encouragement, is that what I handle now on a daily basis would have crushed me not very long ago. What now feels impossible can even feel small later. I have been incredibly fortunate in that I have had a set of stairs to climb in life. Every step is higher than the last. Every step has been challenging, but I've been able to build up to it, step by step. And that is the way that we should look at challenging reps. People often mistake their current capacity for their actual limit. Putting in reps in something you care about until you can look back at what was once a heavy lift and say, that would be easy for me now. That is easy for me now. That is the progression that I'm talking about. That is progressive overload. And developing a truly high capacity changes your understanding of what is possible. Once you've built a high capacity somewhere, you see excellence differently. You see what is possible and what it takes to achieve excellence. This is why I believe that everyone at some point in their life should really lean hard into trying to become world-class at something. Anything. Even if it's outside of their regular discipline. Even if it seems like something that is a trivial pursuit. Because it will show you what it really takes to be world-class. And it will have an impact on nearly every other area of your life. And that is achieved through putting in effective reps. starting with low capacity and building high capacity. And that often translates into higher or faster capacity in other areas. Our trajectory matters a lot more than our current location. We should measure our progress by our direction, not by where we are at right now. Most gains are not immediately visible. Relationships, professional work, writing ability, our career, our fitness. And we will make mistakes. Needing to make corrections is not failure. Picking up something that was too heavy and setting it down is a learning opportunity. And sometimes we need to put in reps in the wrong direction to figure out how to get in the right direction. This happens to us all the time. Movement and progress somewhere is almost always better than inaction, stuckness, even if the movement is not perfectly in the final direction. As we mentioned before, adjustment from movement is easier and faster than adjustment from standing still. And let's make sure that we apply the concepts of measuring, tracking, and benchmarking that we talked about previously to be able to see the effectiveness of our reps over time. And let's also look for ways to chunk up progress. Find ways to stay encouraged and motivated, even if it doesn't seem like the scoreboard has changed in a while. If you're at an 8-minute mile and your goal is to get to a 6-minute mile, the next success point is not at 6 minutes. It's at 7:45, and then 7:30. That is how we measure points along our trajectory. And that is one way that we can make progress in the interim and stay motivated along the way. The most powerful action that we can take is the next effective action that we will do, and that we will do consistently and repeatedly. We should identify what is important and what we are shooting for. But then it's about applying the reps consistently until the returns show up, and then keep coming because we keep putting the reps in. Movement, action is the important part. When things are bad, do something. When things are good, do something. When you feel stuck, put in the reps. When you feel inspired, put in the reps. The magic is often not in the perfect plan. The magic is in the movement. The magic is in the repeated movement in the right direction. I said this back in the last episode, and I'll say it again. You can't have that ripped body tomorrow, but you can have it in a few years. You can't fix your marriage tomorrow, but you can fix it over time, even if it takes months or years, and it probably will. You can't become that present father tomorrow, but you can become one over time. You can't have a profitable business tomorrow, but you can probably have one if you keep at it for long enough. You can't have that book written tomorrow, but you can have the book, the sequel, and the prequel written sooner than you think. You can't have it tomorrow, but you can earn it over time. And now we know how to do that, by putting in the reps. Okay. Thank you for investing in yourself and in those around you. I will talk to you next time. I'm done with money analogies. Just fitness and gym analogies from now on.